With Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree being out for a little over a month now and the hype train for it has died down just a little, many people including myself are wondering, what's next for FromSoft? Specifically talking about what their next Souls inspired game would be. Like, what are they cooking up in the kitchen? And the reason why I say Souls inspired is because there's been a lot of rumors saying that FromSoft is currently working on a lot of games, but a lot of people are believing that the next immediate game that we're gonna get from them isn't a Souls one. Now, we don't know truly for sure if it's a Souls game, yes or no, but I really do hope it is. But eventually, we're gonna get one pretty soon because let's be honest, Elden Ring made a lot of money, like a lot, over $1 billion. So it's safe to assume that they're gonna make more eventually. So in this video, I'm gonna go over what their next possible Souls title could be and what I would like it to be. And if it's gonna be inspired more by the traditional Souls type like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, or maybe it's gonna lean more towards the Sekiro and Bloodborne style. But before I get into this video, be sure to like and subscribe because if you do, your crush will text you or something like that. But if you don't, then that's okay. First, let's talk about a possible Bloodborne 2. Hell no. I don't ever think we'll get a Bloodborne 2. No, I'm not saying it couldn't work because I do think it could, because while the lore and story of the game is great the way it is, I do think that they could find a way to expand upon it. Maybe focusing more on the Vile Bloods, as in the main game they felt more like side content. I remember watching VaatiVidya's Bloodborne 2 video a long time ago and seeing those artworks and cool story premises made me believe that there are ways to add on to the lore. However, we all know Miyazaki doesn't really like to do sequels, but to be fair, if Sony wanted it to happen, trust me, they will make it happen one way or the other. However, what seems to be a bit more possible though is a Bloodborne remake or remastered, or maybe a spiritual successor. Let's start with a possible remake. There has been a lot of rumors, most of them probably debunked by now, about a possible Bloodborne remake. I swear we kept getting teased and teased and teased and cucked by a lot of these rumors. Now I do know that a lot of people are starting to believe that there won't ever be a remake or a remastered, but for some reason I can definitely see it happening. Call me crazy all you want, but for some reason I just have a gut feeling that it's among us. I feel like we might even get an announcement next year. Alright, just chill out, just hear me out. Demon's Souls was released back in 2009, and the remake for it released in 2020, which was 11 years later. Bloodborne was released back in 2015, so that means that we might get an announcement next year, and the remake releases in 2026. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that was some copage, like I was coping hard as hell, but I swear, if we do get an official announcement next year, I know a lot of y'all are gonna come back saying, oh, he was right. Like, come on, just wait. Now let's move on to the possibilities of a spiritual successor. I honestly believe that we might get an official FromSoft Souls game that takes a lot of elements from Bloodborne. You know, the same way Elden Ring took a lot from the Dark Souls series but expanded upon it. I honestly think we might get that even before a remake or a remastered. Think of it like this. The game would probably have the same aggressive combat style, similar world and atmosphere, but it would be different enough not to be called a sequel. And you know, speaking of combat, that's something I want to talk about. Despite the traditional Souls form of combat being loved by many, a lot of people are starting to find it a bit stale. Now me personally, I still love it and find it addicting. However, I can definitely see why some people would want something a bit different in the next Souls title. And knowing FromSoft, they probably would want to change it up a bit. And I think they could do two things. The first thing they could do is lean towards the Bloodborne style of combat and expand upon it, or lean more towards Sekiro's. But let's start with Bloodborne. They could make their next game rely more on a faster, aggressive style rather than the balanced combat of Elden Ring. Now, how could they expand upon this? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure there are many ways, like, you know, actual game devs could, but because I'm not a game dev. But the reason why I brought this up is because even in Elden Ring, one of the biggest criticism the game got from people was that some of the bosses felt way too fast and aggressive compared to the player character, especially when it comes on to attack window for the players. Some bosses like Morgott and Radahn will do an insane combo while only giving you like 1 second to attack them. Now before you come at me, because I know a lot of people get butthurt when they hear any sort of criticism, not every boss is like this, and even some of the ones that are still my favorite. Literally take Mesmer for example. He's super fast, agile, and only gives you around a second to attack him, yet he's still my third favorite Souls boss of all time, and Morgott is literally in my top 10. Now that aside, there are a lot of people who prefer the waiting game style of combat in Elden Ring compared to the aggressive nature of something like Bloodborne or Sekiro. But there's something telling me that the next Souls style of game that we're gonna get is gonna be more fast paced. Again, the reason why I say this is because of the bosses in Elden Ring. I feel like most of them are super fast and agile because the devs are testing the waters to see how players would react to them. But hey, I could be completely wrong. The other combat style I would like to see FromSoft explore again is the one from Sekiro. The deflection mechanic is the bread and butter of Sekiro. It's literally the main reason why I and a lot of people find the game so addicting, and a lot of Souls-likes have tried to implement this mechanic as well. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Sekiro invented parrying and deflecting because that has been a thing in video games for a super long time. But let's be honest, you can't deny that Lies of P and Anatria the Last Song's parry system didn't take inspiration from Sekiro. Now how can FromSoft expand on the deflection mechanic? Well, it's simple, just give the players more weapons. Not saying that they need to have Elden Ring's quantity of weapons, but they could give us at least 7 or 8. Now you might think it's impossible to have Sekiro's deflection mechanic in a game filled with different weapons, especially when those weapons have different sizes. But again, games like Wulong, Inatria, and Lies of P made it work. And they all have a lot of weapons with different sizes. And I think if FromSoft did their thing and expand upon this type of combat, then it would even be better than those games. Now let's talk about the setting of the next Souls game. Now the Souls series, especially games like Demon Souls, the Dark Souls trilogy, and Elden Ring mostly focuses on the medieval dark fantasy-esque setting. Now while I do love these settings a lot, I'm kinda hoping that the next game is set in a different one. Preferably something similar to Bloodborne where it's not medieval but not modern either. A lot of people also love the idea of a pirate themed Souls game, so that would be cool as well. Now we don't know for sure what the setting of the next game is gonna be like, but whatever it is, I'm most likely gonna enjoy it. But again, I do kinda hope it's not a medieval setting. Now let's move on to one last thing, and that's whether or not their next game would or should be open world. Now one of the best things about Elden Ring is its open world. It's the main reason why I keep going back to play it. It's so fun to explore a lot of the areas, and I just love the open-ended feeling. But I also love the fact that they had the traditional legacy dungeons sprinkled around. Now when it comes on to whether or not I want to see that style of level design show up in the next Souls title, well, I'm not sure. On one hand, I really love traversing the beautiful open world. I also like how it wasn't littered with icons and markers and random unnecessary side quests, but at the same time it kinda gets somewhat tiring on subsequent playthroughs. Oh, you want to upgrade your basic weapon in the early game? Well, you gotta get ready to go on an hour-long quest in order to find the right smithing stones. Do you want to be powerful enough not to be one-shot by a lot of the DLC bosses? Well, you better traverse the whole map and find 50 fragments in order to level up your character. Now, I'm not complaining about these things, but I am saying that while I do love the open world, sometimes it's easier to jump back into a more linear style of game. But even linear games have a bit of an issue for me personally. For example, I love Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, but I do wish they had a bit more exploration. Not saying that they should be open world, but while going back to them to do a complete playthrough isn't as daunting as Elden Ring, they do get quite boring after a while, and I know a lot of games are like this, but what I'm trying to say is that maybe the next Souls game should be somewhere in the middle, like a semi-open world that's interconnected like Dark Souls 1 but on a larger scale, but still way smaller compared to Elden Ring. But I do wish to see a large open world Souls title again, just maybe not for the next one. And going back to the first question on whether or not the next Souls game is going to be open world, I honestly don't think so. I feel like it would be way too soon for them. Again, I could be completely wrong. So overall, those were my feelings when it comes on to what big game FromSoft could possibly be cooking up next. Again, I do think that we might see an announcement for their next game either at this year's Game Awards. If not, then we'll definitely get one by next year. But in the meantime, all we can do is speculate and wait patiently. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to, and if you don't, then that's completely fine. Hope you have a good one.